Hi everybody, hope that you're doing well. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back. And if you're new here, hi, my name is Daisy Delicacy. I'm a professional burlesque performer and you're watching Act It Out, which is my web series where I talk about my life as a burlesque performer, specifically the certain acts that I perform. I want to apologize right off the bat for not posting an episode of Act It Out in quite some time. Life got very busy for me over the past few months. As you know, I was in a production of A Midsummer Night's Dream. That happened, it went really well. If you saw it, if you live in the New York area, thank you so much for coming. And if you didn't, thank you for watching the video where I talked about it. If you didn't watch that video, go watch it right now. I digress. The point is, I'm making a new video for Act It Out today, and I'm going to be talking about my Moondance act. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll know that yesterday I put out a poll asking people what act they wanted me to talk about. I gave the options of talking about either this particular act or my Pink Shoelaces act. I'm going to talk about both eventually, of course, but most people, to my surprise, voted for Moondance, which really surprised me. I thought for sure people would want to hear me talk about Pink Shoelaces, but here we are. I am more than happy to oblige. So without further ado, let's get into my Moondance act. Before I get too much into this video, I want to say if you hear any additional noise, I apologize. I live in New York City, I live in an apartment building, it's gonna happen. I feel like I say that in practically every Act It Out video, but you know, it happens. It's just the reality of living in New York City. Even just now, you probably heard the door slamming. But what you gonna do? There's also a thunderstorm going on right now, so if you hear any big, loud thunderclaps in the background, that's why. Can't really change that. But I digress, let's talk more about Moondance. This is just my personal opinion, but I think that one thing that really helps you get booked as a burlesque performer is if you can do themed acts, specifically for major holidays like Christmas, Valentine's Day, and of course, Halloween. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen advertisements for Halloween shows, sometimes not even during the Halloween season, but absolutely during late September to even early November. That's kind of when peak Halloween season is for burlesque, and it makes total sense too. I've seen burlesque shows that are Halloween themed that range from very vampy and sultry and ooh, spooky, sexy vibes to that kind of more, I'm so intense, I'm gonna murder you, I'm gonna stab you, and just be totally crazy. I'm not really that totally crazy kind of burlesque performer. I love those acts, but I would say my style veers more towards the sultry and sexy kind of vibe. Again, I don't really consider myself even super sultry and sexy, but if I had to pick between those two to describe my vibe, it would be more in that realm. So that was the vibe I was going for when I started to create Moondance. With this particular act, I actually started with the music first. And the music for this act actually turned out to be something very different than what I thought it was going to be. Originally, my plan was to do a mashup between Lana Del Rey's Season of the Witch and Michael Bublé's version of Moondance. That was actually the first version of Moondance I'd ever heard in a dance class, a couple years even before I decided to do an act to it. I thought these two songs blended really well. I thought it was going to be really fun. I could start out very kind of like slow and intimidating, and then just go into that very jazzy dance sort of vibe. But the more I tried to edit the two songs together, I'm not the best when it comes to editing music, I'll say that right off the bat. But even so, as I tried to work on them and edit them together, it just wasn't working. It just didn't feel right, it just didn't feel good. Something wasn't clicking. So then I decided to scrap the idea of using Season of the Witch altogether and thought, I'm just gonna dance to the song Moondance. I know that song, I've danced to it before, it's gonna be great. But the issue I ran into was the more I danced to Michael Bublé's version and tried to choreograph to it, I thought, this is really fun to dance to. I like dancing to it, but I just don't think I can do a burlesque act to it, because the whole point of burlesque is doing that tease and reveal. And while certainly you can do that to very fast-paced songs, I wanted this one, especially since it's a Halloween act, I wanted it to have that very mysterious kind of come hither vibe. Trying to dance to a faster version of Moondance just really wasn't working out for me. So I scrapped the idea of using Michael Bublé's version altogether and went back to basics, as you might say. I started listening to Van Morrison's version of Moondance, which I think is the original version. I'm not entirely sure what the history of that song is, but regardless, that is the version I ended up using. And that decision was also solidified by watching An American Werewolf in London for the first time with my fiance. I remember watching that movie, and there's a very key scene where that song is used. If you haven't seen that movie, go watch it right now. It's awesome. So Van Morrison's version of Moondance was the song that I was going to ultimately end up using. And I knew right from the get-go, the whole concept of the act was going to be like me being a witch, trying to cast a spell and lure somebody in. Like, can I just have one more Moondance with you? It's kind of like this. That's the vibe I was going for. Now, I say in a lot of these acted out videos that I started choreographing the act in my apartment or in my living room. That was not the case for this one. I started choreographing this act last summer, and if you know me in real life, you'll know that last summer I was out in New Mexico doing a 3-month-long theater contract. So it was very interesting trying to choreograph that act while I was also in rehearsals for 2 to 3 shows at a time. It was pretty crazy, but during my free time is when I set to work on it. Sometimes you just gotta do what you gotta do with it. So I would spend free time choreographing in the bedroom that I was staying in at the time. I would just listen to the music, and I looked up different YouTube videos of it. I was very surprised, and when I say different YouTube videos of it, I meant the version of Moondance I was listening to, and also to see if there were any other burlesque acts to that routine. That's a good tip too. If you're going to do a burlesque act to a song that is fairly popular, is fairly well known, I would highly recommend looking up to see if anyone else has done an act to it, because you might run into some legal issues with copyright or choreography or anything like that. And it's also just a good idea too to make sure you're not straight up copying something that came before you. So I did look up on the internet, on YouTube specifically, if there were any burlesque routines to Moondance, Van Morrison's version. And to my surprise, there really weren't that many. I think I maybe only found 1 or 2 at the time. And they certainly weren't the concept that I was going for, like the witch trying to cast the spell. So I thought, okay, I'm in the clear. I can start choreographing now. So if you're familiar with Van Morrison's version of Moondance, you'll know that there's a lot of instrumental breaks in the song. You'll know that there's plenty of moments to really just straight up dance. You don't have to tease, you don't have to do any big reveals. So for me, that was something I always tried to keep in mind as I choreographed this particular act of where do I just want to dance? Where do I want to tease and reveal? And the whole vibe of the song, in my opinion, was very Fosse-like. So a lot of the movement I ended up coming up with was very Fosse influenced. I do a lot of this kind of snapping. I do a lot of like this kind of movement too. I don't think I do anything turned in the act. I'd have to go back and rewatch it all, because if you're familiar with the Fosse style, there's a lot of like turned in legs, there's a lot of like this kind of movement, even like slumped shoulders. I did do some kind of slumpy shoulders throughout the act, but overall it was Fosse influence, not straight up Fosse. So like I said earlier in this video, I wanted to keep everything also very sultry too. The song itself is very sultry. If you listen to the lyrics, it's really a come hither kind of song. So like I said earlier, lots of this movement, lots of come here, lots of very slow kind of, ooh, look at my body, look at that collarbone, sexy, sexy collarbone. I did a lot of up the body movements. I played with the skirt that I was dancing with a lot, just a lot of I'm tantalizing you, I'm beckoning you movement, which was super fun. It made me feel very sexy and very powerful as I did it. The other thing too about Moondance is that I really was playing a specific character in it. Like in my Midsummer act, I was playing a fairy. In Moondance, I was playing a witch. So I had to kind of embody what I thought this witch character would be like. She was very commanding. She's very much like, yeah, I know, I'm in control. But she's not threatening and she's not mean. She just is very knowing of her power and her energy. And embracing that really felt cool as I choreographed. So I'm sure most of you will know what I'm gonna say about where I got my costume materials, but I'll say it anyway. I got most of my costume materials, fill in the blank, costume materials on Amazon. Thunderclap, big rainstorm happening. So anywho, got most of my costume materials on Amazon. The corset is from Amazon, the skirt is from Amazon. The skirt is actually just a purple version of my tulip or turnip skirt, but hey, if it works, it works. So I used that. The gloves are also from Amazon. The hat is from Amazon too. The only exception to what was not from Amazon were the boots that I wore. Those are Laduca boots. I'm a dancer. Every dancer needs a good pair of Laduca boots. And the necklace, which is just a piece of ribbon. I got that from the Michaels in New York. I say that because there's like 17 million Michaels. The one that's closest to me, I got it from. So that was the costume. The detailing that I did on the gloves, if you've seen it on my Instagram page or if you've just seen the teaser for the act, the gems came from High Trim and Feathers in New York City, and I did like a star pattern. I did the, I call it the snowflake star kind of look, and then I also did just a 5-pointed open star, and then another snowflakey star, and then I put gems all around just to give it that little extra sparkle and that little extra oomph. I'm not too big on putting tons of sparkles on my burlesque costumes, and I know that's kind of sacrilege in burlesque because there's so many sparkly and feathery and shiny costumes out there, but that's just not who I am. And with burlesque, you have to be who you are, even though you're not being who you are. It's so weird to say that. You have to be true to yourself. That's a better way of putting it. So I filmed Moondance at Ripley Greer Studios with my fiance Andy helping me out. And I learned from my last time filming a burlesque act at Ripley Greer to get a bigger studio this time. It did cost more money, but I had so much more space. I felt so much freer to dance and to move and to just really go for it that time. So I think that really helped my confidence because if memory serves, we filmed that act in one take. Yeah, and that's extremely rare for anything that I ever film. I've already done like 17 million takes of different sections of this video. But when I film burlesque acts, it usually takes me anywhere from like 3 to 4 takes to get a good, solid, just video that I'm proud of. But this one we did it in one take, and I was so, so happy. Forgot to mention earlier that the pasties I got, actually, that is a costume piece I should mention. I got it from an Etsy shop. They're gorgeous. They are spiderweb pasties with tassels because they do a little shake at the end, if you've ever seen the full act live. But yeah, it was great. And that filming day went so smoothly for that. I couldn't have been happier. And the act turned out beautifully. And I was really proud of myself too because I was worried, is this gonna turn out good? I don't know. Am I gonna remember all my choreography? And I did. Sometimes things just work out. Sometimes things just only take one take and you're good to go. One of the reasons Moondance is a very special act for me is that it, technically speaking, was the first burlesque act that I choreographed, that I made from start to finish, that I got to perform live. When I did perform it live, it was at Tallulah Talon's open stage night at Club Cumming in October of last year. And because it was October, I was like, I'm going for it. I'm gonna do some witchy vibes. Actually, was it October or November? I don't know, but it was around that time. It was still perfectly apt time to do a Halloween themed act. So I went for it and I did it, and oh my God, that experience was something else. There were a lot of really wonderful acts that night, a lot of really wonderful people, and I was super nervous. I remember before I took the stage, I could feel my legs just shaking, my knees knocking together because I was so nervous. I thought, oh my God, this is real now. It's not just me dancing in front of my video camera. I'm doing this. It's for a live audience. And it taught me so much about performing burlesque for a live audience. The thing I want to say about doing that act is when you do burlesque for a live audience is sometimes they'll hoot and holler for things that you would never expect them to hoot and holler for. I was totally shocked that there were moments where they were cheering for me and very loudly cheering and clapping for me, which felt amazing. And there's also moments where you are just dancing your heart out, you're trying to be as sexy as possible, and you don't get a reaction. And it doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong, but getting to experience that, getting that vibe and hearing those reactions really, really felt good. And I remember Andy came to see me perform that night. He was sitting at the bar. He was sitting next to a guy from the UK who was very familiar with An American Werewolf in London. So he knew the song that I was dancing to, and he was kind of singing along with it, and that felt really good. I didn't hear him when I was performing, but hearing that story afterwards was amazing. And it said to me, okay, I did a good job. I did my job. I do have some footage from that night, so I'm going to insert a little bit of that right here for you to watch right now.
Well, it's a marvelous night for a Moondance with the stars up above in your eyes. Fantabulous night to make romance neath the cover of October skies. With all the leaves on the trees are falling to the sound of the breezes that blow. You're trying to please to the calling of your heartstrings that play soft and low. You know the night's magic seems to whisper. You know the soft moonlight seems to shine in your blush. Can I just have one more dance with you, my love? Can I just make some more romance with you, my love?
Of my Moondance act. In terms of where this act is headed in the future, I don't know. I hope it gets booked for other shows. We are approaching another October pretty soon, so maybe it'll get booked shows for here in the city, maybe somewhere else. I don't know. But I love this act. I love performing it. I would do it any time of year in any show. So if you are a producer, or if you know of people wanting to book burlesque acts, especially for Halloween shows, in all seriousness, I would just love to perform this act again in any way, shape, or form. So if you enjoyed this episode of Act It Out, because now we're at the end, please like, share, and subscribe. And please let me know if you have any other ideas for future Act It Out episodes. I love hearing from all of you. Thank you all so much, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.